Talk to us about who you think in your lifetime is the
So
best line.
I don't have the 91 team is not included in my scope that I felt comfortable discussing. I, of course, know a lot about the 91 team, but I didn't live that and was coherent during that. I wasn't watching that season, of course. So I don't want to discuss things that I really didn't live, at least to this extent. So my frame of reference, because that team blew up shortly after. Barry ended up leaving the team and everything fell apart. And then we were super bad for a really long time. And we haven't made the playoffs a lot since. We famously do not have any playoff wins since. So there is only a couple teams really in this conversation. And my pick is a no-brainer. So I'm going to spend more time talking about why this team was actually even better and closer to a title than people imagined, more than I spend time trying to convince you that they're the best team I've seen, because it's not that much of a debate. 2011 is one of the teams you may try to throw in that debate, but that defense was so poor in the core. The good players on the team that we had were so young and inexperienced. They just were absolutely not ready, even though the offense tried to carry that team, especially once Javid Best went down. I would hear your arguments if you wanted to tell me if Javid Best stays healthy, things could have went different that season, but you weren't fixing that defense even if you could have kept them off the field a little bit more. So the best team to me is clearly the 2014 Detroit Lions. Oh. And I want to talk about a little bit. Number one, when I say best team, which no matter how you cut it, they are the best team, but I'm talking team. And I'm really going to take coaching out of this equation, because when I talk about the best team, I'm talking about a collection of talent and what they're capable of. They had some talent. In fact, I'm going to tell you, this team was built exceptionally similarly to this year's Super Bowl champion, the LA Rams, who also happened to have Matt Stafford at quarterback, grizzled vet Matt Stafford at this point at quarterback. These are actually very similarly built teams. Just one had really good coaching and caught a few more breaks. All right. They didn't have the calls like we had in Dallas in 2014, or during that season. It would have technically been 2015 go against us the way that. But I don't want to relitigate that game
for sure,
just to justify how good this team was. I want to talk about this team. And we're going to start with what the 2011 team didn't have. And that's a defense. DVOA, which is Football Outsiders, one of their advanced metrics to judge. They judge both defense and offense with it. And it is weighted for the competition you play. They take garbage time out of it. They had Detroit as the number one defense in the NFL that season. Just this one statistic. It is an advanced statistic, and it's a quite good one in 2014. Now, I do not agree with that. And it is a little bit, our defense was built for a bygone era. And when I say that, we had a historically good run defense. We were anchored by Ndamukong Suh, of course, considered far and away at the time the best defensive tackle in the NFL. And he was a game wrecker. He was a game wrecker all on his own. We had Ezekiel Anza, who was very good. Yeah. We had DeAndre Levy, the DeAndre Levy that was capable of leading the league in interceptions and playing sideline to sideline as a rangy linebacker. He could blitz and get a sack. He could pick off a quarterback. He was sticky in coverage. He was absolutely elite, one of the best linebackers in the NFL. We had a decent secondary. We had Glover Quinn. Glover Quinn, one of the best signings, honest to God, free agency signings we made. If I recall, it was a 5-year, $25 million deal. He was considered the second best free safety and free agency. We got him for just $5 million a year, and he ended up being by far the best signing. He was money. Our secondary was not great. You had guys like Tahir Whitehead, who we got from Jacksonville, who's a little older in free agency playing quarterback and doing an admirable job. But that was the weakness a little bit. We were not an elite pass defense. We were vulnerable through the air. And it showed when we played very good passing teams. We would shut down the run against anybody. We were very good at stopping the run, and we developed a lot of pass rush, especially interior pass rush, helped by guys like Ndamukong Suh, which of course can help derail an offense. And that masked a lot of our deficiencies in the secondary that were not horrible, but we had some flaws in the secondary. And because we lacked a little bit of balance on the defense, and we're built for kind of a bygone era of football, they weren't the best defense in football that year, even though DVOA had them as the best defense in football. But they were very good. They were a very good defense. So that's very important. You have to have a good defense. It's something the Lions have not had much in the last 20, 25, 30 years even, and especially in the Matt Stafford era, which is when we want to look at when they could have had the most talent. Of course, it's when you have your recent Super Bowl champion playing quarterback for you. See, we talk about offense. Well, you had Matt Stafford. You have Calvin Johnson, arguably the greatest receiver to ever play. Throw him up there with Jerry Rice, throw him up there with Randy Moss. It is a complete receiver, speed, size, route running, ability to catch the ball in traffic. How many highlight reel catches does he have with 3 defenders draped on him? Really, truly a complete receiver that was a burner. You put a guy that is 6'5", 230 pounds, with Tyreek Hill's speed, in route running as good as anybody in the NFL. You couldn't cover him. He put up a 300-yard game almost against the Cowboys. Not in that playoff game, but in his career, like around that time, he put up almost a 300-yard game with one team. That's how good he was. You also have the ever underrated Golden Tate. Golden Tate was awesome. He was a sick slot receiver. So you have 2 monsters at receiver, and you have Matt Stafford dishing them the ball. And your backfield looks pretty decent. You have Reggie Bush, who never became the superstar that a lot of people thought he was going to be out of college, but he was certainly a solid runner. And you had Joique Bell before Joique Bell completely fell off the wagon as far as injuries and derailing, but he came out of nowhere. So you have weapons on offense. And you have an exceptional quarterback. A quarterback that now we know is capable of winning a Super Bowl. A quarterback that has thrown for 40 touchdowns in a season, that has thrown for 5,000 yards. He did it a few years prior to this season. You do have a deficiency on offensive line. But of course, if we're talking about the Lions, there's going to be a deficiency because there's not many complete teams in the NFL. And it goes deeper because even with what we had, the awful coaching we had, Jim Caldwell being a complete buffoon. And I will not have decorum when I speak about Jim Caldwell because he is an absolute buffoon. In the atrocious play calling we had from Joe Lombardi, and you look at what happened in Dallas, that we were an all-time officiating blunder from winning on the road in Dallas, winning that playoff game. And so you look, okay, they could have won a playoff game. They could have beat Dallas. But does that really mean they were close to contending? Well, what happened to Dallas? Dallas lost in controversial fashion the following week to Green Bay, which we would have had to play Green Bay. They should have beaten Green Bay, but they didn't. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. This is a Green Bay team that, mind you, the Lions had already beaten in the season at home. We had a nice win over Green Bay at home. Then, of course, week 17, we went to Lambeau and we ended up blowing it. Didn't win, but we split with Green Bay during the regular season, and we're more than capable of beating them. So you can't say we weren't on par with Green Bay, and you can't say we weren't on par with Dallas. What happened the following week after Green Bay beat Dallas? They had to go and play Seattle in the Legion of Boom. And it took an actual miracle for Seattle to win that game. It took an all-time collapse. Russell Wilson, I believe, threw 5 interceptions in that playoff game. It was bad. And it took a complete collapse by Green Bay. And Green Bay loses to Seattle down at the wire. Just a close-fought game. And then what Super Bowl did we have that year? We had Seattle versus the New England Patriots in the famous goal line interception. We have the Patriots taking a super late lead that you're like, oh my God, the Patriots did it again. They won. And they take a super late lead in the Super Bowl. Then you have a miracle catch for Seattle that helps get them down to the 1-yard line. And it's like, oh my God, the Patriots defense blew it again. And then Russell Wilson throws his famous interception and they lose the Super Bowl to the Pats. And the reason I bring up all these games is to illustrate that none of these teams was clearly ahead of the other. All of these teams that we're talking about were right there. They were all contenders, all capable of beating each other. And I don't mean on any given Sunday miracle. If all of those games were played 10 times, a team doesn't win probably more than 6 of them. Right? Like we're talking about a 5-5 series or a 6-4, which of course we don't get to play the game 10 times. But the point is, even with our incompetent coaching, with our horrible misuse of our offensive staff, we were right there. We were right there with New England as a Super Bowl team. We were right there is with Seattle as a Super Bowl team. We already knew that we were right there with Green Bay, who lost in heartbreaking fashion in the conference championship. And of course, we think we should have beat Dallas.
Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on a one. Yeah.